Hi everybody, this is TJR, and this evening I decided to watch the pilot episode of The Orville, which is a new show created by Seth McFarlane, best known for his work on Family Guy. If you've seen the trailers for this show, it quite obviously is a Star Trek parody or a spoof on Star Trek, and particularly a spoof on Star Trek The Next Generation. Now, it's pretty well known that Seth MacFarlane is a big fan of Star Trek. And so when I first saw the trailer for this series, the first thing I couldn't help but think is, wow, I wonder why he didn't think of doing this sooner. But then again, maybe he's wanted to do this for a while, and maybe he couldn't get this show greenlit until now. I also have to admit that I was more intrigued by the trailer for this Star Trek parody show than I was by the trailer for the real Star Trek series called Discovery that's going to be coming out very soon. The trailer for Star Trek Discovery did absolutely nothing for me, but I'm still going to check it out when it premieres. So what did I think of this opening pilot episode? Well, first of all, I thought it was better than a lot of critics have been saying that it is. I appreciate that they took the time to get the special effects and the sets right, and even the music cues right to just evoke Star Trek. I've read that in some interviews, Seth MacFarlane is saying this is not a Star Trek parody or spoof, that this is an action drama show with some humor in it. And I don't buy that at all. This is a Star Trek parody. Two characters in particular who are part of the regular crew come off as direct parodies of characters from Star Trek The Next Generation. And while some of the show's gags are just simply gags for the sake of gags, one of the first gags we get is a gag dealing with the holodeck. So I don't care what anybody says, this is a Star Trek parody, and to a certain extent a Star Trek tribute. But that doesn't mean that all of the characters and situations are necessarily silly or comedic. There are some serious moments with the characters, and there are some serious elements about the plot. Now, the plot for this pilot episode is what I would say a maybe average, standard Star Trek plot. There is some good action in there, and there is a clever resolve to how our characters get out of the predicament that they're in. One thing that struck me while I was watching was just a little throwaway line where the bad guys of the series, this series version of the Klingons, suddenly comes on the attack to the crew of the Orville, and one of the crew members has a throwaway line of, "Oh man, we are not getting off at 5 today, are we?" Now, the reason why this line was funny is because of the way it was delivered. The crew member delivered it as if he was working at Walmart versus being on board a starship that's about to be under attack by a group of hostile aliens. But what struck me is, had you delivered that line with a little bit more of serious irony, it would not have been out of place on an episode of Star Trek. And I think that this is probably going to be one of the best ways that this show could find its quote-unquote funny. By first thinking, well, what would happen on Star Trek, and how would they react to this on Star Trek? Okay, now how do we just tweak that just ever so slightly so that now, instead of coming off as serious, it comes off as funny? This opening pilot episode was not the greatest hour of television I've ever seen. I don't know if I would even call it great television. It was nice and enjoyable television. But this pilot episode basically gets its job done, and that job is to establish the series, establish the characters, and get us ready for the rest of the show. Now, there are enough aspects to these characters that hopefully, if the writing is clever enough, we will get more into these characters, more into their situations and their backstories, and that will not only create better drama, but also better comedy. And if the show works this angle, instead of just mining, Star Trek related gags or having cameos from cast members of previous versions of Star Trek, and avoids that kind of gimmicky stuff. Not that I don't want the gimmicky stuff. I think it's great to add it in there, but it should only be a sideline and not the focus of the show. But if it actually really starts to delve into the characters, I think this show may have a good chance of being both a good comedy show and an enjoyably fun action-adventure series. Television has changed so much since the last Star Trek series was broadcast on TV. We now live in a world where television has become very cinematic and very cerebral, very complex, and at times very realistic. So I think the only way you could do a more light-hearted and fun action-adventure show is to do something like what this show is attempting to do. I enjoyed this pilot episode as a bit of light-hearted fun, and I'm going to watch it again next week, and hopefully the series will rely more on its characters than it will on reference gags. In the meantime, have you watched the pilot? What did you think? Are you coming from the Trek fan perspective or the non-Trek fan perspective? I'm curious to know what you think, and looking forward to checking out your comments. If you like what I'm doing here on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel, and if you do subscribe, please be sure to click notifications so you can know when I make new videos. Thanks everyone for watching, and talk to you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.